Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you Immigration Law on Your Side.
Magandang gabi mga kababayan. Nandito na naman po ang Immigration Law on Your Side. Hatid po sa inyo ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. I am here in Las Vegas at the PHLV Radio Studios. Ang kaibigan nating si Attorney Flomy Diza is in the Bay Area. Nandun po ang opisina ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. Siyempre po meron din silang opisina dyan sa Pilipinas. So magandang umaga po dyan sa Pilipinas. Magandang gabi naman dito sa Amerika. Magandang gabi, Attorney. Kukumustahin muna kita.
Good evening, Johan, and to all our viewers and listeners. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat sa, of course, pagpanood at pakikinig po ninyo sa amin sa programa naming Immigration Law on Your Side at patuloy po tayong makinig para sa mga updates at malapit na pong election kaya marami po ang pagbabago at ng ating immigration law dito sa US.
Nako, nabanggit nyo ang update sa mga kababayan. Marami po tayong update ngayong gabi. So tumutok po ngayong gabi sa Immigration Law on Your Side. Today is the 14th of October, kalagitnaan ng mga kaibigan ng Oktubre. With the holidays fast approaching, nako, sigurado marami sa atin ang gustong bumiyahe. Especially we've been restricted to travel for an extended period of time already. Especially hindi tayo makauwi sa Pilipinas. But malaman natin ngayon kay Attorney Diza kung ano ang mga requirements, ano po ang mga restrictions. Is it even possible to go home to the Philippines right now? So tonight on Immigration Law on Your Side, pag-uusapan namin yan ni Attorney Flomy Diza ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. Pagbabiyahe patungo sa Pilipinas, mga kaibigan, traveling to the Philippines during this time of COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, other updates mga kaibigan tungkol sa immigration. Attorney, yung mga US citizens po ba ng mga Pilipino, dating Pilipino na mga US citizens na hindi dual, sila po ba ay makakapasok sa Pilipinas sa ngayong panahon?
Yeah, unfortunately, Kuya Yo, hindi, di ba? Dahil kailangan, general rule is that if you're a US citizen traveling to the Philippines, hindi po kayo papayagan pa unless, of course, unang-una dual citizen kayo or meron po kayong visa. Mostly sa mga kababayan natin nagtatanong sa amin kung nag-handle po tayo ng dual citizenship, we answer no because madali lang yan. They have to apply it at the Philippine Consulate dito sa ating area. Johan, meron tayo sa San Francisco at saka mga jurisdiction po ng Las Vegas ay sa Los Angeles area. Now, the thing with the dual citizenship, Kuya Yo, at gusto man nilang mag-travel, ay tawag nito, matagal ang scheduling. I heard from the Consulate General na yung surge ng applicants times 10 yata,
Wow.
At saka yung scheduling kasi if you look at the website, Kuya Yo, napupuno. So wala nang available, sold out lahat at fully booked lahat sila until next year. So I'm not sure if they're going to, it depends kasi lalo na ang San Francisco and other areas, meron pa rin tayong shelter in place where yung opening ng mga offices ay restricted. So hindi rin sila makapag full blast ng mga mga applicants kasi kailangan din sila, Kuya Yo, before a former Filipino who became citizen na pwedeng i-regain yung kanilang pagiging Filipino, di ba? Kailangan na mag-take ng dual citizenship and they have to be in person. Yun ang problema doon dahil as we mentioned with this situation, masyadong maraming restrictions. So yeah, generally hindi at even if they have a visa or may dual citizenship sila or mayroon nakakuha sila ng visa, right? Kasi yung mga US citizen na nakakuha ng visa pwede rin mag-travel, kaya lang syempre may mga, as we mentioned, may mga restrictions din.
Wow. Alam mo, Attorney, nung binanggit natin sa Facebook this morning that we will be talking about this, marami nagpadala ng mga tanong. So most likely our episode tonight will be Q&A and I'm sure excited ang ating mga kababayan at malaman ang mga updates kung talaga namang makakapasok sila ng Pilipinas. Isa sa mga naitanong sa atin, Attorney, is a negative COVID-19 test. Kailangan bang negative ka bago ka makapasok sa Pilipinas?
Well, we hope that people traveling are negative, di ba?
Yeah.
But the good thing is, of course, hindi yung requirement siya na ito yung aking test na meron akong negative test. So, well, of course, binibigyan pa rin natin ng advice sa mga kababayan natin. Of course, if they don't feel or meron silang lagnat or they think that they are infected, of course, they don't have to travel. But the good thing is, negative test result is not a requirement for them to travel. And we're going to emphasize din, Kuya Yo, that we're, as of now, as you mentioned, October 14 po tayo ngayon, part of our discussion, or yung basis ng ating discussion ngayon, are what we gathered from the US Embassy, as we communicate with them, and as we find on online resources.
Mhm. Well, if it's not a requirement to be negative to travel, siguro naman pagdating sa airport, merong mga health screenings, ano, attorney?
Correct, Kuya Yo. May mga health screening yan, may mga temperature checks. At the thing with US citizen, Kuya Yo, is they are mandated to have a quarantine for 14 days. Kaya
Oh.
ang saklap din yan dahil of course, lalo na sa atin that we go to work and we expect to work and we want to have a vacation with our family, right? Pero kung mag-self-quarantine or mag-quarantine sila sa mga designated places, mga hotels or motels, right? At their own expense, for 14 days, doon na napunta yung 2 linggo nila. So it's a requirement to quarantine. Of course, may mga siguro exceptions yan, Kuya. We heard a lot of stories where people will have their own tests aside from those mandated government mandated facilities who will conduct the examination, but they can also have a private facility to do the testing para they might be able to leave, before for the 14 days.
Mhm. And this quarantine sa mga accredited hotels, this is at your own expense, mga kababayan.
That's correct.
Sariling gastos yan, mga kaibigan. Kaya if you are qualified to travel for some reason, well, you have to take that into consideration. At katulad ng nasabi ni attorney, ay baka maubos lang ang iyong panahon sa quarantine days. And pagdating po naman sa Pilipinas, attorney, I'm sure meron ding mga curfew at other restrictions. Ano po?
That's correct, Kuya Yo, dahil may mga quarantine sila, di ba, yung mga mandatory, or sa bagay nag-lax na ang Pilipinas, depende na sa by region yata or by local areas kung ano man yung instructions or yung kanilang directive, of course, bawal mag-travel, or kung mag-travel kayo from one place to another, either meron kayong authority to travel or permission to travel. We have heard also people whose family, of course, siyempre sa ibang lugar, kumukuha sila ng permit to travel para lang maka-attend ng occasions, like may namatayan or may ikakasal,
Mhm.
So those are the things that you need to find out, kasi hindi lang basta-basta sila, pupunta sa Cebu or sa Bohol or sa Davao, or Palawan, for example. So those are the things that people need to keep in mind if they are U.S. citizen traveling to the Philippines.
Well, but as you could imagine, mga kababayan, tourism is hardly hit in the Philippines because of these. Gustuhin man natin magbakasyon at magpasko sa Pilipinas, napakaraming kailangang gawin. And like what we mentioned a while back, even if you wanted to apply for dual citizenship, it's going to take a while because tayo dito sa Las Vegas, ang ating consulate sa LA, ganun din, backlog din. Diyan din sa San Francisco, mahaba din ang pila para makapag-apply po ng dual citizenship or iba pang mga requirements like visa. And if attorney, sila po ay nagkaroon ng tsansa at na-approve at bubiyahe sila sa Pilipinas, within the Philippines, are commercial flights even operating right now?
Yes, they do. There are some operations, local flights and international flights. That's the good thing about this one. Of course, as we mentioned, gustong-gusto na natin mag-travel, right? But of course, you need to book in advance as well, kasi most common problem ng ating mga kababayan, of course, yung flight delays or cancellation. Di ba? Hindi mo maiwasan yan dahil lalong-lalo siguro ang mga airline companies din, dahil kung konti lang ang magta-travel, may mga cancellations yan. So watch out for those, either by plane or by land. May mga travels na rin. But of course, as we mentioned, those are restricted.
And we are going to hook up with our media partners in the Philippines para maipaabot natin sa inyo mga kababayan ang report on the ground. Malaman natin kung nakakapagbiyahe from Manila to the northern part of Luzon, to the southern part of Luzon, and as well to the Visayas and the Mindanao region. Sa ibang programs pa ng PHLV Radio, we're going to have our International League of Broadcasters also update us on those areas. Pagka nandoon, attorney, sa Pilipinas with the current pandemic, alam mo, mukhang nababalitaan namin na mas matindi ang mga fines for non-compliance doon. Pag wala ka lang mask or something, medyo mas matindi ang fine ng ating gobyerno sa Pilipinas. Have you heard of such stories, attorney?
Yes, that's true. Even driving, or even you are in your private car, no, private vehicle mo yan, I think you are required to wear mask. Right, my in-laws just arrived recently from the Philippines, so they were wondering, like they were putting the mask dun sa sasakyan. Sabi ko, dito ba walang nagsisita? Sabi ko, no, because it's a family member, traveling together. Hindi naman ini-impose na mag-mask tayo, di ba? Dahil siyempre para sarili mong bahay yan. But I heard from the Philippines, kahit nasa sasakyan ka, you're required to wear mask. Especially, of course, sa mga public areas, mga hotels and mga malls, people are required to wear masks. Otherwise, they will be imposed heavy fines or heavy penalties.
Okay, at nung nag-start nga itong pandemic, attorney, we learned of many things like ECQ, GCQ, and so many things that we don't even have here stateside. So mukhang maganda ang management, but maganda po mga kaibigan na tumutok sa ating radio para malaman ng mga updates regarding this. So mga kaibigan, we just gave you a snapshot of how it is in the Philippines. If you want to go there, what are the requirements, and of course maybe siguro magandang ma-check nila, attorney, sa mga website ng ating mga consulates, ng Philippine consulate, attorney.
Yes, search lang po nila ang Philippine Embassy in the Philippines, or pumunta rin sila sa Department of State Travels, and then click po ninyo ang Pilipinas. There are many resources doon, online resources, if you're planning to travel, if you're a US citizen, if you're a lawful permanent resident, or kayo po mga Filipino na gusto nang ring umuwi. Of course, you're still Filipino, and what we're discussing right now are, applicable only for people who are US citizens. Kasi kung Filipino po kayo or green card kayo, yung regular po na travel, may mga konting restrictions, of course, the wearing of the mask while at the airport and the airplanes, but quarantining and testing, I don't think that's a requirement, because you can go directly to your house or homes or relatives pag kayo po umuwi sa Pilipinas.
Kasi it's assumed na local kayo at meron kayong bahay doon at hindi kayo iikot, hindi kayo mga turista. In other words, meron kayong you're Filipino. So that's, libre kayong gumala sa Pilipinas. So talking about consular operations, pag-usapan natin, attorney, yan, especially para sa ating US Embassy sa Manila. I'm sure marami na rin ang nagbago. But we'll head over to a break first. We'll remind our audience ng ating Reeves Immigration Law Group kung paano nila makokontak ang ating mga kaibigan from Reeves Immigration Law Group. Pagbalik po namin ni attorney, mga kababayan, dyan lang po kayo, tutok lang, because we will be talking about updates regarding sa US Embassy naman sa Manila at sa consular agency sa Cebu. I didn't know, meron pala tayong consular agency sa Cebu. So pag-usapan namin yan ni attorney sa pagbabalik po ng immigration law on your side. Diyan lang po kayo.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Mga kaibigan, nagbabalik po ang Immigration Law on your side right here at PHLV Radio. We're on this platform every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific. And live na rin po kami sa YouTube ng PHLV Radio simultaneously and of course sa widescreen sa PHLV Radio channel sa ating Amazon Fire TV. Kung may Fire Stick po kayo, mapapanood nyo kami ni Attorney sa Fire Stick sa widescreen. Mga kaibigan, pinag-uusapan po natin ngayon ang mga updates hinggil sa immigration and travel to the Philippines. Before we headed to this break, napag-usapan natin ang mga restrictions. Kung kayo po ay pupunta ng Pilipinas, especially kung kayo po ay US citizen at hindi kayo dual citizen or hindi kayo Pilipino. And again, these information, this is current as of October 14, 2020. If you're watching us on our on-demand platforms, sa ating mga podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and sa Apple Podcast. Attorney, sa larangan naman ng ating consular operations ng US, consular operations sa Pilipinas, may nagbago na po ba in terms of our US Embassy?
Marami ng pagbabago, Kuya Yo, at mula nung nagkaroon tayo ng quarantine noong Marso, at nagkaroon ng gradual reopening, kagaya na dito sa US ng USCIS and Immigration Courts as early as September. Meron na po silang mga gradual reopening and in-person interviews. So what they're doing right now is that yung consular report of birth abroad, isa sa mga discuss natin in our past episodes where in order for children born outside the United States of US citizen parents, para ma-recognize sila as US citizen, isa sa mga requirements yan is to have that consular report of birth abroad. To make sure that they are considered as US citizen kasi para silang pinanganak, di ba? Pinanganak ng US citizen and therefore they're US citizen. So kasama yan sa mga services that the embassy in Manila and the consular agency dun sa Cebu they continue to accept those kind of applications. So very restricted. Basically they are assisting US citizens sa mga services. But also very important to note ay yung sabi natin gradual reopening when it comes to the visa interviews and visa applications. Unahin natin yung mga immediate relatives, yung mga anak or asawa ng US citizen, right? Or kayo po ay minor at parents po ninyo ay US citizen, ay tinatawag natin immediate relative. They're already scheduling interviews as early as October. First part of October, may mga natatanggap na tayo mga interview appointments regarding yung immediate relative petitions. Marami na rin tayong mga nakasalang, yung mga clients were waiting for their interview appointments. May schedule na, in other words. So yun yung mga gradual reopening nila. And also, they already open yung mga other non-immigrant visas kagaya ng J, yung mga exchange visitor visa, yung mga crewman visa, and other non-immigrant kagaya ng student visas are also included in the application. At yung mga EB3, nabanggit natin, Kuya Yo, yung mga registered nurses since because they're exempted from the suspension of immigration because they're coming here for medical reasons, so rather to render medical services, kagaya ng registered nurses o mga doctors. So exempted po sila dun sa suspension of immigration. So those are already in line for interviews. So meron na po, nag-open na po sila. And also take note sa mga kababayan natin, even if you are not on the exempted doon sa suspension ng immigration, kasi very limited lang yung mga exempted. Kuya Yo, if you remember, right, you are immediate relative petition or kasama kayo doon sa medical, na sanabi natin, medical services coming to the US to render medical services, exempted po kayo. Or they also mentioned, Kuya Yo, yung mga mag-age out. So halimbawa, even if you are not an immediate relative, halimbawa pinatition kayo ng parent you who is a lawful permanent resident and you are turning 21, you're about to age out. Diba? Kasi kung hindi po kayo ma-interview at kayo mag-turn 21, hindi na kayo makakarating dito, right away, kundi maghintay ka ng another maybe 10 years. So just because of that aging out. So those are the exceptions. And those are the services that the embassy is currently in line, currently in process.
Isa sa mga natagap nating mga tanong, attorney, about visa processing sa Pilipinas is of course very popular yung K, fiancé visa. Is it being processed now, attorney?
Yes, and no. The answer is no, unfortunately, kasi if you're going to, again, we look at the suspension ng immigration ng Pangulong Trump, that's going to be in effect until the end of this year. Hindi po kasama ang K1. Very vague kasi yung, not really vague, but hindi siya specific na mention ang K1. Although sometimes we consider K1 as an immediate family, right? Kasi as US citizen yung petition, they come here to get married and get the green card. But unfortunately, it's not included in the exception dun sa suspension ng immigration. And for the US Embassy in the Philippines, hindi pa po sila nagpapatawag ng interviews for the K1. So wait and see po natin, hopefully by the end of this year, right, or immediately after the end of this year, magkakaroon po tayo ng another updates for the K1.
Ayan. So nasagot mga kababayan ang inyong tanong regarding sa K1 visa. With the pandemic still giving us headache all over the world, attorney, yung mga nasa Pilipinas nating mga kababayan, if they're already doing an interview, katulad ng nasabi nyo, umuusad kahit pa konti-konti, are there any changes in terms of medical examinations? Dahil syempre, because of the pandemic, meron bang mga bagong requirements or ano po ba ang nabago regarding mga medical exams para sa ating interview?
Yes, may mga clients po tayo, mga applicants nagtatanong where they are waiting for their visa interviews. Hindi sila kasama dun sa exception ng suspension ng immigration, right? They were saying na magpa-medical na ako so that I'm ready by that time matawag ng interview, tapos na ako. Now, we discourage people to do the medical exam right away kung wala pang visa interviews. Kasi ideally, we require them. And in fact, ang embassy's website also require all applicants to undergo medical examination once they receive the visa interviews. Now, a lot of people are saying, with the advice of some agencies in the Philippines, magpa-medical ka na para okay ka na by that time may interview ka. But the problem here is that if you do your medical exam, they might take your medical exam because nababayad ka, di ba? So you call them and set an appointment and you just tell them that I'm waiting for my visa interviews. They might allow you to do the medical exam already with a payment, of course. But we discourage simply because my expiration ho yan, Kuya Yo, is valid for 6 months. A lot of people say, may visa na ako, mag-expire na, kailangan tawagin mo na ako sa interview. Yun ang pang ng mga kliyente minsan eh. Attorney, mag-expire na yung medical ko, kailangan ko ng interview. I said, we didn't require you to do your medical. So, but that's the thing. And very specific po ang embassy that expiration of medical examination is not a reason for them to call you for an interview or expedite your process. Ang ina-expedite lang po nila, as we mentioned, is yung mga immediate relatives, right? O pinapatawag ng interview or for people who are aging out. Ibig sabihin, magto-21 na sila. So it's a recommendation not to do your medical until, of course, you have the until you have that visa interviews. Very naman ang St. Luke's, madali lang na naman. You can just look at your website and call them to schedule for an appointment. But keep in mind that the sealed medical exam is valid for 6 months only. So yun ang problema kasi once na hindi pa kayo natatawag, mag-expire na yung magbabayad ulit kayo. So just a reminder sa ating mga visa applicants.
Like with everything, timing is everything, mga kababayan. At baka medyo masyado kayong excited, mag-expire lang po yan, sayang lang. Attorney, isa sa mga naipadala sa atin, itatanong ko na lang sa inyo kung anong ibig sabihin nito. How will I send the required documents after a 221G refusal? Ano po yung 221G, attorney?
Yes, yung kulang ng lacking of documentation, di ba? So, in other words, usually kasi after the visa interview, the consular officer would say, congratulations, welcome to America, right? Or, well, unfortunately, hindi pa kita may issue ng visa because may kulang kang documentation. So yun, yung nirefuse ka ng visa at that time, immediately after the interview, because you're lacking documentation. That's why also that it's very important for mga kababayan natin to consult or even hire an immigration attorney, lalo na kung may pagkakomplikado yung case nyo to make sure that before you go to the interview, right, all the documentations necessary and required for your visa are complete, di ba? Para malaman, ma-remind, dala-dala mo na, magdala ka pa ng extra requirement if they're going to ask. Kasi marami mga kababayan natin that they thought they already submitted everything, di ba, during the process. But, embassy officials would still like to see this one. And because of the complexity ng immigration history po ninyo or maybe criminal history ninyo, may mga required documents po kayong additional documents na require ang embassy. So yun po, hindi po ninyo kailangan in person na i-submit huyaan. May mga courier agencies po tayo sa Pilipinas where yung to go nila tinatawag, where you can send your documents by mail. So very important na ipadala pa rin ninyo yan kung anong hinihingi, kahit na ipadala na ninyo, you still have to, kung ni-request ang embassy sa inyo, hindi ibig sabihin na exempted na yung pagsasubmit because, it's of the pandemic. We strongly, of course, advise our client to comply with the requirements para ma-issue ang inyong visa.
Okay. So yan, nasagot ni attorney yung katanungan na mga kababayan. And by the way, sa ating mga viewers, you can comment, pwede nyo isulat sa comment section ng ating Facebook feed right now ang inyong mga katanungan. At kung hindi naman po, ay ipadala sa PHLV Radio even before the show. Para katulad nito ay naitatanong natin kay Attorney Diza. Attorney, isa sa mga naitanong sa atin is kung meron na po daw siyang visa, can they extend the validity of their expiring visa dahil hindi sila makatravel?
Yeah, unfortunately, the answer there generally, Kuya, is no. That's why yung validity ng visa po ninyo is valid for 6 months. Right? Ang exception nun, of course, kung mag-age out po kayo and you need to leave bago po kayo mag-21. So yung 6 months na yun, masyadong mahaba yun kung tutignan mo. Kaya lang marami sa atin, right, tinatapos muna ang dapat tapusin, pag-aaral, wind up business, magbenta ng properties, mag-retire, stuff like that. But there's no automatic extension ng inyong visa. Unfortunately, hindi ganon. You still have to apply and write a letter to the embassy, the reason. And I think this pandemic is a good reason, to tell them that because of this situation na hindi po kayo nakaalis kaagad. So if you received your visa, let's say in March, nung nagkaroon na ng closure, din na kayo nakaalis kaagad, it's already, October na ngayon, that's over 6 months na. It's a good reason for you to, request for the extension ng validity po ng visa ninyo.
Okay. And another question, attorney. Inuulan tayo ng mga questions ngayon. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pakikinig at panunood. I'm sure this is a case-to-case basis and you might have already outlined this a while back and in our previous episodes. Pero magandang ma-review na rin natin. Sabi dito, is my case affected by the proclamation suspending entry of immigrants who present risk to the U.S. labor market during the economic recovery following the COVID-19 outbreak? Ito yung hanggang December 31. I'm sure it's a case-to-case thing. Attorney, ano po ang comment niya dito?
It is a case-to-case, and as we mentioned, this administration suspended the entry of immigrants sa US. Hindi lang mga immigrant visa, Kuya Yo, kasama rin yung mga non-immigrant visa kagaya ng mga H-1Bs, di ba? Mga L-1s, as we previously mentioned, and this is going to expire hopefully by the end of this year, unless of course magkaroon ng injunction ulit with the pending court cases. Baka sabihin nila na okay, baka pwede nang isuspend yan, i-lift yan. So watch out for the immigration news kung kailan humalift ang suspension ng entry of immigrants. So kung kayo po ay nasa immediate category or immediate relative category, kayo po ay asawa ng US citizen, kayo po ay may anak na minor de edad at you're a US citizen, kayo po ay registered nurses at mayroon kayong mga petition from the hospitals or employers, kayo po exempted dyan. Kung kayo po ay magto-21, exempted din po kayo. So you can request for an interview, you can request for the expedite process para matawag na po kayo ng interview. So if you belong to those people who are still able to get the green card or the visa despite this proclamation, then do it. And you are exempted. You are, you should process your case and be able to get that interview and get that visa.
Thank you so much, Attorney, for that update. That para sa mga nakamiss ng ating episode on that news, ay at least meron po kayong information from Attorney Diza ngayon. Attorney, I'm sure, as we always say, immigration is very dynamic. It's always fluid and it's always developing. Araw-araw, halos may balita tungkol sa immigration. I'm sure meron po kayong iba pang balita tungkol sa immigration. Nabalitaan po namin itong public charge rule ay implemented na. So, Attorney, mabalitaan natin ang ating mga listeners.
Yes, parang ano yan, yung season,
Season.
implemented, not implemented, implemented, di ba? Parang pabalik-balik lang yan. But as of now, currently, Kuya, after October 13, kahapon, required na yan for people applying for green card in the US. Kailangan na po kayo mag-file ng self-sufficiency form. Fill that out with all the supporting documentation. Make sure that you or your family did not avail of the public charge, right, within the last 24 months, or if you did, ito yung mga requirements na gagawin po ninyo. So it's becoming more difficult to apply for a green card because of that additional requirements, right? Kasi sabihin natin, you did not acquire or you did not apply or did not avail of public benefits, kailangan pa rin po kayo mag-submit ng additional documentation because of that, to make sure that you are not a public charge in the United States. That's number one. Now, for people who applied before the effective date ng implementation ng public charge, they may request you, so paghandaan din ninyo, immigration might issue a request for evidence, right, requiring you to submit proof of the self-sufficiency. Now, that's one update. For people at the embassy, wala pang implementation, they might again require you to buy for medical insurance before you come here, but that's not in place yet. And then the other very important update sa mga kababayan natin is that yung tawag nito expedited removal. I've been discussing this again, where yung expedited removal, very very common, Kuya, yung mga dumarating dito, di ba, na walang valid visa or the intent is to come here to work, right, or come here to marry, nalaman nila sa port of entry mo, so you'll be expeditedly removed. Ito yung tatawag natin airport to airport. They determine it at the port of entry. But also, like the Trump administration also implemented expanded the implementation of expedited removal that applies for people who are here less than 2 years and they are unable to prove their physical presence for over 2 years, and they can be expeditedly removed. So without the benefit of immigration court hearing. So yun din naman sa club, this is we mentioned revolving story, and hopefully there's already news going around where the ICE of the Immigration Custom Enforcement, yung ICE po ay training officers how to implement this policy. Just be careful sa mga kababayan natin who've been here for over 2 years, for less than 2 years. But for people who are over 2 years, make sure that you have, yung proof po ninyo na nandito na po kayo for more than 2 years. Kung may mga paychecks po kayo or may mga travel po kayo to show, or yung I-94 ninyo, di ba? Any documentation showing that you've been here for 2 years would be very helpful if and when you're confronted, yung physical presence po ninyo sa Amerika.
And mga kabayan, we had a lengthy discussion about both topics here at Immigration Law on your side, both public charge rule and then yung expedited removal. We are going to post below on the comment section the links to those episodes para mabalikan nyo, mga kaibigan, yung discussion namin ni Attorney Diza regarding the public charge rule. Siguro nagtataka kayo, ano ba ito? O kaya yung expedited removal. We're going to post below on the comment section of this post. Pati na rin sa YouTube and on our website para mabalikan nyo, mga kaibigan, ang episode regarding public charge rule and expedited removal. Nako, medyo marami-raming updates ngayon, Attorney. Talagang siguro dahil is it because October is the start of the fiscal year, or maybe that's because that's the reason why masyadong maraming updates?
Well, that's for sure, Kuya. Malapit na ng election, and you mentioned about the start of the fiscal year, reminding everyone, aside from the updates that we mentioned, yung mga EB3, right, current po yan, yung mga nurses, yung nasa US po kayo, yung mga professionals, yung mga employers, at K245I, we mentioned that at yung petition po ng employer, current po siya, EB3, EB1, EB2, EB3 sa Pilipinas, current po yan, available po yan. So that's also very important for the month of October, and hopefully tuloy-tuloy yan for a long time para sa mga kababayan natin nandito are able to apply for the green card.
And some of the nurses that actually contacted us, attorney, last week, and they were saying like, oh, current nga yan, pero hindi naman nagpapadating. But as you outlined a while ago, if you are on the medical profession, nurse kayo, at you'll be able to help in the pandemic, exempted, ano po, attorney?
That's correct, yes. That's going to be very helpful for us here in the US as well.
Nako, attorney, maraming salamat. I know you're very busy now out there in the Bay Area sa pagbubukas na ng gradually ng ating mga opisina dyan and mga kliyente natin. I'm sure you're so very, very busy. Yet you're here with us giving us updates. It's so appreciated, attorney. I'll give you this floor to address our audience, attorney, at mga clients ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. Go ahead po, attorney.
Yes, lahat po tayo ay tumutulong sa pagsugpo ng pandemic na to, and everybody is exercising all these precautions. We gradually also, yung capacity namin is 20%. I went to CIS today and, just to accompany a client whose case is complicated for his citizenship. Wala ganong tao din po yun. At saka yung precaution na ginagawa rin ng USCIS, yung nandoon, di ba? Yung wearing mask, social distancing, plexiglass, walang tao. Kung noon is 200 yung nasa lobby, ngayon parang wala pang 10. So nakikita natin yung difference and also the cause of the delay. Kaya sa mga kababayan natin na hindi pa nag-file, ng mga applications nila at lalo hong tatagal with this pandemic dahil very limited po ang mga interviews nila, right? At saka reminder na rin sa mga kababayan natin, as we mentioned last week, hindi pa ho nag-increase, nagkaroon ho ng suspension ng fee increase kasi tumatas hanggang more than 80%. As we mentioned, immigration is always evolving, right? Maraming pagbabago, maraming mga binabago. Siguro next time, we also encourage yung mga listeners natin, kung ano yung interest po ninyo that we can discuss here, but we are also probably outlining, mga immigration actions na ginawa ng Pangulong Trump bagong magkaroon ng election para makita din natin kung ano yung mga nagawa niya sa immigration at ginawa niya sa mga immigrant communities. Having said that, sa lahat mga viewers natin na nasa Amerika at mga US citizens na hindi pa nagre-register to vote at mga hindi pa bumoboto, right? It's time for you to exercise that right. And I was always telling my class, lalo yung mga newly minted US citizens, to exercise your right. I mean, I'm not going to dictate to you kung sino yung iboboto ninyo, but as long as, kung sino gusto nyo, iboto po ninyo as long as you exercise that right, that's all okay to us because this is what is democracy is all about. Having said that, Kuya, maraming salamat at sa patuloy niyong pag-imbita dito sa PHLV Radio to give immigration updates sa ating mga kababayan. At hopefully sa mga viewers and listeners natin, you continue to stay safe and healthy and of course continue listening to us here at PHLV Radio.
Nako, maraming salamat, Attorney Diza. Napakaganda nung nabanggit nyo, newly minted US citizens. Nako, talaga namang ang sarap pakinggan, ano? So, mga kaibigan, yes, go out, register and vote kung hindi pa ka nag-register. Now, of course, exercise your right to vote. So, Attorney, maraming salamat and our regards na lang dyan sa lahat po ng staff ng ating Reeves Immigration Law Group. Nandyan po sa may Bay Area, nandito rin po sa LA area, and then syempre, nandyan po sa Pilipinas, and then meron din sa China. So, kumusta din po sa mga staff ng Reeves Immigration Law Group dyan po sa Pilipinas. Magandang umaga sa inyo naman dyan. So, Attorney, again, maraming salamat and stay safe po kayo dyan, and we will see you next time, everybody, right here at PHLV Radio. Ito po ang Immigration Law on Your Side every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific sa PHLV Radio. We'll see you next time.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side, Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific on PHLV Radio.